not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
We are also praying for the people of Puerto Rico. We love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. And we also love Puerto Rico.
Song's too good. I gotta let it keep playing. It's got like another minute or a few seconds, I think. Let's go. Boom. Hello, everyone. This is, and I can't see with these glasses on, so my screen is black. This is Rolo, the Puerto Rican pistolero. This is episode 2 of Rolo's Rants. I wish I could wear these sunglasses the whole time, but I can't do it. They're polarized. I can't see anything. There goes my idea. Terrible, terrible. We've got 22 people here to start the show. It is a pleasure to see all of you here this evening. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot to talk about. I don't think so. Nothing happened this week. Nothing happened this weekend. There's absolutely nothing going on. Ad Victoriam for $5 already to get the show started. Said, "Hail Rolo. Trump tried to get our troops out of Syria, but was thwarted by Pentagon deep staters. Looks like yet another Trump was right moment." I wonder what you could be talking about, Ad Victoriam. I really do. I'm really not sure about this. You might be talking about certain things that happened in the Middle East, which are a tragedy, but it's kind of in the long line of terrible things that always seem to happen in the Middle East that cause the U.S. to get involved and escalate. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You know, I was thinking about how I was going to start the show. Normally, I start with like the opening rant. So whatever the first topic is that I have in the title, I kind of go with that. But today, I almost feel like I'm going to do the show in slightly reverse order than I normally would. I wanted to do like this whole life advice thing kind of at the end, but I think that the theme for life advice today just kind of occurred today. There was a lot of I was thinking a lot about what I was going to say for this show today. There are a lot of different directions I could go. There's a lot of crises that we're going through in this country, and we've seen kind of an escalation in language rhetoric lately. And normally, you guys know that normally I go on these pretty wild rants and tangents. That's going to be no different today. But I also thought about kind of one word that can kind of assist us here. Ad Victoriam's comment kind of goes with this, and that's restraint. Restraint is something that it's a word that I've become very intimate with over the last few weeks. I think that sometimes we have to show a little bit of restraint when we're doing certain things, be it talking about politics, being in the political situation, or just life in general. And so that's one of the things that I've kind of been doing. I didn't really think about it until today, maybe the last few days or so, about, kind of showing restraint and having gratitude for certain things. It's nice to I used to do the show with a co-host. Obviously, you guys all know what Locked and Loaded Latinos was all about. And it was sometimes easier to show restraint when you have a co-host that can kind of beat you over the head. So when you're kind of going solo, you can kind of get carried away with things sometimes. And knowing when to say things, when not to, how to say things, how to approach a situation is something that's really important. And I think that that's something that we all kind of need to learn. It's probably something that many of us can improve on. Some of you grizzled veterans out there probably are like, well, yeah, of course. Like you learn this being around for a while, when to make your move, when not to, and things like that. But I want to say that I have a lot of gratitude that I have people that I can talk to about some of the topics that I'm going to discuss. And people that I talk to that are extremely intelligent and that can kind of be a great sounding board for a lot of these ideas that I have, because I've got the facts. Sometimes the emotion is there and it'll get the better of me. So I've been trying to figure out, and sometimes, you know, I know you, those of you that have watched me over the last 4 years since I started YouTube, know that it can, I can be a bit of a catastrophist. I always try. I'm again. See, I'm going to get owned in the chat because I know my zodiac sign. But I'm a, you know, and you guys have heard this on the show before. I'm a Capricorn. Capricorns tend to be realists, and we're also very cynical. So I know I personally can be very cynical about things, and sometimes I go down this negative path. That's, you know, basically the path of the black pill. But somehow each and every day, you know, I go back to my life and play video games and everything like that. Great to see the veterans in the chat. Bruce, old 82nd Airborne, Buddha Cafe, 1st Marine Division. Thank you for your service, guys. That's awesome. Great to hear. And so I just want to say that I appreciate those that I talk to, and those whose opinions I value very, very highly, that I can kind of have discussions. And there's nothing that I love more. And sometimes people are surprised by this, because I think sometimes we're stuck in our echo chamber sometimes. And there's a desire to sometimes, I don't know if I want to call it jumping on the bandwagon, but we're too afraid to call ourselves out. You know, maybe when we're wrong, maybe when we're being hyperbolic, things like that. So I really appreciate that I have somebody that I can talk to that will that challenges my opinions and makes me think about things in a different perspective. And I think that's influenced the show tonight pretty heavily for me. And that's why I started the show this way. So that's going to be the theme throughout the show. Gratitude for those that we care about, and knowing when to show restraint. So I think that will carry over for the rest of the show. So I appreciate all of you for being here, and let's get it started. So obviously there's a lot of things that are going on this week. The breaking news right now was an attack that happened in Syria. I was definitely talking about you, the Forgotten Man. It was totally you. It definitely was. So I think the biggest topic of the week and kind of the headline for the show is obviously the crisis at the southern border. It's been getting worse by the week. It's been, look at that. Everybody knows their zodiac signs. I'm impressed. Usually men, we don't want to admit that stuff. It doesn't mean that you believe all of that stuff. It's just like you kind of have an awareness. And when you're around women long enough, you're going to know. You're going to know. The women always know this stuff. They always comment on it. Whether they're serious about it or not, they always know. Like you can tell almost any woman a date, and she will figure out, like she won't even look it up. She'll be like, oh yeah, you're this sign. You're just like, what the hell? How do they know this? Like, how do you have the dates memorized? Then the hardcore ones can tell you like rising Saturn or some other crazy crap. Like, I don't know that I don't go that far. I really don't go that far, but I am, yes, I'm a goat fish, by nature. So I don't think that I'm definitely, when it comes to the cynicism, it matches me, but for everything else, I don't know. I guess you guys will have to be the judge, and you can be like, that's totally Capricorn right there. So Oh, there you go, Aquarius. So we got Scorpio, Pisces, Aquarius. Very, very nice. Very nice. Another Aquarius. Cool. Cool. So let's talk about the border crisis. Ever since Joe Biden came into office, it's been an utter disaster. We know that President Trump was trying to secure the border as much as possible, trying to build the border wall and, disincentivize, illegal immigration to this country. By having the Remain in Mexico policy, and we saw those numbers diminish greatly during his administration. But ever since Joe Biden has come in, it's been the complete opposite. We basically have an open border at this point, and it's been causing massive problems. We're seeing now sanctuary cities are starting to suffer the consequences of their actions and for their status. And it really is, it's a controlled invasion, and I think that there are obvious solutions here. We can kind of shut down the border, secure it. I would think using the military to actually defend our border instead of going to Ukraine. Well, they're not in Ukraine, but instead of sending money to Ukraine, we can take those funds and help secure our border here and disincentivize people coming here illegally. We know that there are a lot of NGOs, non-government organizations, and individuals within the federal government that are trying to encourage this. I'm sure you've seen people wearing the shirts that, hey, Biden promised us benefits here and we're going to go. So even if the U.S. government itself, is not openly doing those things, we need to basically prevent. We have to stop people that are doing that are selling these people lies, that are, causing people to take risks to come into this country and ultimately destroying opportunities for the American people. And not to mention the fentanyl crisis that we have, the cartels bringing in drugs, and the Chinese obviously assisting with that by flooding this country with fentanyl, and possible terroristic threats. We can see what's going on in the Middle East right now, and it seems like it would be pretty easy for one of these terrorist organizations to just get across the border here and try to set up shop without any issue. And they can certainly get the guns, because we know that the cartels have a ton of guns, which I believe that they got a lot of guns because the federal government was selling them as part of Fast and Furious, not the movie franchise, but the operation run by the ATF, where they were basically running guns to cartels in Mexico if we know the serial numbers of these guns, guys. So if we give them these guns and then we arrest them later on, we'll know how the guns got there. It's totally genius. What could possibly go wrong in that kind of situation? And we know what went wrong. We had a Border Patrol agent who was murdered, and who knows how many other times these weapons have been used by the cartels against innocent Americans or, people in Mexico trying to survive. And we know that the cartels are savage. They've basically reached the level of savagery that we see with Islamic extremist terrorists in the Middle East. The difference is, these guys don't have religion to really back that up, a religious ideology. It's all a profit motive and wanting power. And so we've seen Mexico destabilized in certain areas. We've seen other South American countries go through this. Recently, Ecuador had a huge crackdown on the cartels and the criminal organizations that they had there. Not something that I talked about, but definitely an important subject if you want to look it up and see how they handled that situation. We see a lot of other countries that are having similar issues. And this is a destabilizing force, and it's something that we need to, really get a handle on in this country. And I think the biggest issue that we have right now is essentially the constitutional crisis at the border, where we've seen at this point, the federal government has abdicated its responsibility and its, role constitutionally to defend and secure the border. And we're seeing Texas and Governor Greg Abbott to have to take up that mantle. Now, let's go through what Governor Abbott said, and then I'll talk kind of about the escalation, where this could go, and, some of my fears of, kind of people doing stupid shit that would be pretty bad in this situation. So let's go ahead and check that out. And let's bring up Governor Greg Abbott released this letter on the 24th, so 4 days ago. I'll just go ahead and read it. The federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he smashed records for illegal immigration. Despite having been put on notice in a series of letters, one of which I delivered to him by hand, President Biden has ignored Texas's demand that he perform his constitutional duties. President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. Instead of prosecuting immigrants for the federal crime of illegal entry, President Biden has sent his lawyers into federal courts to sue Texas for taking action to secure the border. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes that mandate the detention of illegal immigrants. The effect is to illegally allow their en masse parole into the United States. By wasting taxpayer dollars to tear open Texas's border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants away from the 28 legal entry points along this state's southern border, bridges where nobody drowns. He's referencing, people that were drowned, crossing the Rio Grande, and then the media obviously tried to blame the Texas National Guard for putting razor wire along the border and into the dangerous waters of the Rio Grande. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That's more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that the states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. That's why the framers included both Article 4, Section 4, which promises that the federal government, quote, shall protect each state against invasion, end quote, and Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which acknowledges, quote, the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders, end quote, as enforced in Arizona v. the United States, 567 U.S. 387419 from 2012, with Justice Scalia dissenting. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill duties imposed by Article 4, Section 4 has triggered Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. For these reasons, I've already declared an invasion order under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. The Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and other Texas personnel are acting on that authority, as well as state law to secure the Texas border. Signed, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas on January 24th, 2024. Whoa, didn't mean to do that. So there you have it. That was Governor Abbott's letter to President Biden. And what effect is it going to have? I don't think it's going to have any effect. I think that right now we're in a pretty precarious and dangerous situation, to say the least. I know that 25 other states have backed Governor Biden. I know that Oklahoma has said that they're going to send their National Guard. I believe that Governor DeSantis will plan to do the same thing. And it's Greg the Goblin dropping 20. Thank you so much. So this has obviously reached a level that's unprecedented. It's not something that we've seen before. Part of it could be it's an election year, so there's obviously an escalation of rhetoric. But the fact of the matter is that this has gotten so bad that we're starting to see sanctuary cities complain about the crisis. When you start seeing Democratic voters in these cities, which, reinforce these policies for years, start pushing back. Now, not all of them. Obviously, some of these mayors just want money so that they can put that in their city's coffers. They don't care about the issue. But you're seeing illegal immigrants or illegal migrants, whatever you want to call it, going on flights without any security. You're seeing them go through TSA lines where you see the signs where essentially it says, hey, if you're a migrant in this country, you can fly. You don't have to get your photo taken. You'll need to show any ID, nothing like that. So we don't know where these people are going, where they're propagating. There was, I wish I had saved this one. a border patrol agent that, spoke on, anonymously, basically talking that the Biden administration gives each of these migrants, something like $3,000, and they give them a cell phone so that they know when their court date is. I don't think that they're going to answer that phone and go back to their court date. And the fact of the matter is, when you have 6 million in the last 3 years alone, probably even more than that, let's be perfectly honest, and then the millions that have come in the years before that, now you have a massive crisis. I believe it's something like, 30, 40 million, maybe even more. And, there goes the notification for Greg's super chat. Thanks again, Greg. When you have this, it's all piling on itself. And now we have, 25 states that whose governor signed a joint letter in support of Texas. And we have a lot of spicy things that are trending right now. And I just see, thank you, Night Train. It's great to see you. I just see this as, I personally don't know what's going to happen in this situation. In the past, Republicans have kind of shown some strength and they eventually caved behind their principles. Obviously, the Supreme Court, basically stated that the Biden administration could cut the razor wire. You have a humanitarian crisis with so many people trying to cross the border. This affects all the countries downstream. But ultimately, we have to disincentivize this. We have to secure the border, and the federal government has to do its job. So where can this go? What are the solutions? We obviously talked about the solutions. Follow the laws on the books, secure the border the correct way, and continue building the wall that will assist. And you have to make it so that corporations, any company that hires somebody that's working, that's not a U.S. citizen and it's under the table, they don't have a green card or anything, you have to find the crap out of these companies. You basically have to decimate them financially. You have to take away their profit motive so that they don't do this. Any NGOs that are trying to incentivize people to come into this country illegally, they need to lose their funding. They need to lose their nonprofit status. And, we need to make sure that they can't do these things. And ultimately, we have to deport these people. So this is something that has to happen. The United States right now, the economy here is not great. We have a lot of people suffering in the inner cities. We have a lot of people that don't have jobs. Obviously, the pandemic allowed the federal government to take more power than ever before, and it showed that they were willing to do so. And this is just going to continue to be an issue. And here's something that a lot of people don't talk about. So obviously, I'm sure that a lot of us on the the right side or the libertarian side of the aisle, the freedom-minded, constitutional side of the aisle, whatever you'd like to call it, we probably looked at sanctuary cities and we started laughing at them because it's like, well, now you reap what you sow. This is what you wanted. Now you're suffering the consequences of it, and you get what you pay for. The problem is that now the census bases the population of a state, which determines how many representatives you get in the House of Representatives or congressmen in the House of Representatives by population. So now we're giving these states more population, which means they're going to get more representation because the census does not require you to indicate whether you're a citizen or not. So we're counting non-citizens, illegal immigrants, as part of these state populations, and that's going to give them more votes in the House of Representatives, which means ultimately this is actually empowering Democrat states. It doesn't matter that they can't vote. And in a lot of these states, they want to try to give these people the ability to vote, which would be a serious problem. And it would be, you can't do that in federal elections, but they'll find their way to do it through other means. So this is the issue. These are the things that we have to do. Now, is the crisis too big? I don't know. Can we logistically deport that many people? I don't think that we can do it any more than they can go to court. I personally think that that's kind of the case. And I think that the powers that be that wanted this illegal immigration kind of know that. So this will create a crisis downstream where if you attempt to do it, first of all, there is no manpower to do such a thing. It really just comes down to you have to make it so that people cannot work if they're not in the E-Verify system. So they don't have their green card. They don't have, any other sort of work visa. They're not working towards their citizenship. Then they're out, or they can't get a job, and then that's it. They'll eventually have to leave anyway because they've got no incentive to remain in this country, and they'll essentially self-deport. That's really the most logical way to do it, on top of securing the border and punishing companies that hire illegal migrants and try to skirt that, go under the table, things like that. So that means going against the Chamber of Commerce, going against major corporations, and obviously fighting the woke propaganda that the media and the powers that be, the left, the progressives, even people within the Republican Party want to. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of Republicans that they haven't made an effort to secure the border. That's why sometimes when I see what these states are doing, now the states are a little bit different story than obviously people in Congress, but have they really been incentivized to do this? Or is this just another issue where the Republicans kind of keep it alive as well because they can vote on it? So, hey, look, crisis at the border, vote for us and we'll secure it, blah, blah, blah. Then nothing ever really gets done unless you have a president that's willing to implement that, which we had with President Trump. So this is kind of where we're at. Now, that's the solution. That's kind of the easy way. If we had a president and an administration that actually cared about certain ideas and that cared about the rule of law and American citizens over anyone else and did their jobs, then that's it. So, and this is all going to take effort. It doesn't even matter. This is something that will take years and it will probably take more decades to fix, and you won't permanently fix it. There's always going to be an issue here. So really removing incentives, securing the border, that's what we can do. It will prevent the problem from being worse in the future. I'm not sure too much what we can do logistically to take care of the immediate problem of illegal immigrants unless we go after it financially, really. So we see these states, we see the National Guards mobilizing. What are some of the things that can happen here? So we need to obviously pay close attention to what Texas is doing. Exactly, Jupiter Cyclops. It's a uniparty. And you can see it. This is why they push back so hard against certain political candidates. Whether it's, obviously there's the big dog in Trump. He's kind of the albatross for them. But even guys like Vivek and even DeSantis for a while to a certain extent, they don't want any of these candidates because they can't be controlled. They're not part of that uniparty structure. And that's why they push so hard. We've seen the cases that are going against Trump. Whether you like him or not, it's pretty ridiculous. And we've never seen that with any other political candidate. And there are a lot of other ones that we know have done worse things. And that for a long time, they weren't going after Trump for anything because he was outside, on the outside looking in. He was friends with everybody. He was basically a pop cultural icon as well. So, but as soon as you try to thwart the uniparty or push back against the powers that be, this is what happens. You have a target on your back and they will try the character assassination campaign, destroy your reputation, take away your assets, wear you down financially. And that's what they're trying to do. That's how it works here in the States. Obviously things can escalate to Soviet style levels eventually, but right now this is what they're doing. It's a discrediting campaign. So being in the gun community, you hear different things. And for a long time, a lot of people have been talking about this. And, there's a lot of law enforcement, military, ex-military, people that just, want to train and care about this country. So one of the things that I've been concerned about, and I've talked about this in the past, you guys know that on the previous show, is when you see posts like this that are trending. And it's pretty disconcerting because I think even I, as somebody that's talked about this in the past, when you see what the repercussions are of this and how it would work, it would be a good situation. So let's talk about this scenario here a little bit. It's a scenario that I don't encourage. And I think that what we're seeing now, okay, states mobilizing their National Guards, they're going to have to deal with the federal government and what the federal government does. Will the federal government try to mobilize them into the DOD structure and basically take those National Guard troops away from those states? Will there be pushback from governors, or will National Guards men and women basically oppose the federalization of their units and stand with their states? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I personally think this is what I think realistically is going on. I think eventually Republicans will cave, but it's very possible that both sides are kind of looking at this escalation and they think that the other side is going to cave. And obviously the danger with that is that this could escalate to the point where something happens. My bigger concern is let the states, let the governors handle this. This is the first time that anything like this has really happened, or at least in decades, maybe even centuries in this country. Let's see how that plays out. We have to see how that plays out, because ultimately I see a desire. There's almost a desire for something to happen. And it seems like both sides are having this. There are a lot of people that seem like they're itching for a fight, and the other side wants us to do it. This feels like, to me, like how January 6th was, where we know what happened with January 6th. We saw what happened there. We saw how the feds orchestrated that. We saw what happened with Governor Whitmer. And my concern here is that this seems like the perfect setup to me. This seems like the perfect setup to me. And I will go through some of the other repercussions, because I know certain people are going to be like, well, if the feds are doing this stuff, shouldn't we just get this over with? There's a lot more involved here that I think a lot of people don't think about. And unfortunately, we have to think about, because we're in a multipolar world now where the U.S. is not necessarily the only superpower. And there are powers that be that would completely take advantage of the situation that the U.S. is in. And I can tell you some of the immediate issues with that. So let's look domestically what some of the problems are. So let's say that civilians try to go down there to help the National Guard. I think the feds know that this is happening. You can be sure that the feds are monitoring communications. They know who's going down. People are making posts on social media. They're not using encrypted comms or things like that. And it doesn't matter, because information gathering and intelligence gathering, especially in the digital realm, is unprecedented what the government can do. If you think that you can hide something from the government, when the government really wants it, they're going to find out. Now, obviously, there's a lot of incompetence within the government. There's not as much incompetence in the intelligence agencies. Typically, when the intelligence agencies fail, it's not necessarily a failure. A lot of times it's intentional. So I foresee a situation where either A, somebody does something stupid because they've been instigated, or B, and maybe even more likely, let's say that we have a federal agents posing as people in a militia or something like that. They cause some sort of crisis, an attack, whether it's on, people trying to get through the border illegally, or they have some sort of confrontation with Border Patrol, and it's all orchestrated. What are some of the repercussions that we're going to see from this right away? Number one, there's going to be a massive crackdown. I personally think that the governors in Republican states will probably cave if something does that, and they'll immediately try to de-escalate the situation. But I can assure you that the Biden administration will completely take advantage of such a scenario. And they will use it to, at a minimum, demonize the right. They will go after guns, that's for sure. Because they'll say, look, private citizens shouldn't have this level of firepower. Now we see that they've opposed the federal government. This is why we can't have guns and things like that, which that in and of itself is going to escalate things to another level if that happens. So I'm telling people to have vigilance. Don't go into a situation that is so obviously bad, especially when the states and the governors themselves are actually making a move here that may be beneficial, that may push the federal government to say, you know what, we don't want this to happen. We really don't want to deal with this right now. So don't give them every incentive to escalate the situation. Yes, Night Train says, never let a crisis go to waste. And that's what they would do. Now, let's say that this does go even further. You're going to see that crackdown. You're going to see the push against guns. Depending on what happens, you may even see martial law implemented to a certain extent. You may see them declare an emergency, in which case what would they try to do? Well, then they're really going to start pushing it to Trump, because Trump is telling people, Trump has been supporting the states and the National Guard. So they'll find some sort of way to blame it on him. And then that will make his legal issues even more difficult. That may disincentivize the Supreme Court from getting involved in the cases where states are trying to take him off of the ballot, because we know that they ultimately, for the most part, it seems like the Supreme Court is more afraid of making decisions that they think won't create conflict than actually doing what's constitutionally correct. So, and for the most part, I think because the left typically behaves badly, everybody is afraid of the left. The problem is, I think if the right is pushed hard enough, there's going to be repercussions, and they're not going to be good. Like, let's be honest. You don't play games with people that have the means to escalate. And then at this point, you have some sort of crisis and, a civil conflict. And I don't think that we want to deal with that. And do you want to deal with this situation when the Biden administration is still in power, when you could try to wait a few months, maybe President Trump comes in and we start, dismantling the deep state, these organizations. Hopefully he takes Vivek as his vice president, and Vivek has some great plans for dismantling the FBI and distributing agents to other agencies, because let's be honest, we have too much bloat and redundancy within the federal government. There are too many agencies that overlap that do the same things, and the FBI is one of those. And at this point, the FBI is pretty cancerous. We need to look at the intelligence organizations as well, the CIA, the NSA, and see what they do. We need to find out, are they blackmailing politicians? Is that what Jeffrey Epstein was all about? They're going to push back against that. They're going to fight as hard as they can to discredit people. We already see it. But, that's what I think. We have to wait. We have to wait for certain things, because if this escalates now, what are some of the repercussions? Obviously, there's going to be mass destruction. There's going to be a lot of death. You're going to see an authoritarian state rise out of this, because the federal government is not going to allow a true sort of insurrection or anything like that. It's not going to happen. You're not going to see an organization. There is no organization right now to oppose the federal government. There isn't. All communications are monitored. There are feds everywhere. You can bet that any sort of militia group or anything that exists like that has federal agents that have infiltrated it that are monitoring comms. So getting organized in that way is going to be nearly impossible unless you have a figurehead character, and there is nobody that is going to be willing to do that. Is it going to be one of these governors? Is it going to be Abbott? Is it going to be Trump? I don't think anybody's going to take up that mantle once shit hits the fan. I think everybody's going to want the union to stay together. So let's look at one immediate repercussion if this country starts splitting, because they're not going to allow a peaceful national divorce. Maybe a lot of people would like that. It's not going to happen, because there's no way that both sides are going to be able to agree on. Let's look at this map and see if it were to break down this way, just based on the states that we're seeing here. What do I see that is in common here? We have these states here, which don't really have natural resources. California does, but they don't like fossil fuels or anything like that. They also control the most major ports in the United States. So we've now lost the West Coast to all trade in the Pacific, which is where most of the world's trade at this point occurs, with China and other countries. Maybe we don't want to be involved with China. That's fine. You still have access to Japan, Philippines, and the Korean Peninsula. And this cuts us off from Hawaii. Hawaii is not going to side with us. It doesn't matter. So do you think that the union is going to allow the states that produce all of the energy, whether they want that energy or not? The fact of the matter is, oil and natural gas are produced in most of these states. Even wind power and all that stuff is produced in most of these states. They've lost access to the Mississippi River at that point. So do you think a peaceful divorce would be possible under these circumstances? I don't think so. And so this is what will happen. So can't do it peacefully. They're not going to allow the union to split. So boom, you have a conflict. How's it going to play out? How's the military going to decide it? Are they going to sit on the sidelines? Are you going to have your own scenario within the military where it collapses? Possibly. Let me tell you one thing that's going to happen for sure. Overnight, if it's a serious crisis, the U.S. will no longer be a superpower. We won't. We're going to be done. The U.S. economy will collapse immediately. The U.S. dollar will be worth nothing. And basically only the governments will, the feds are the only ones that are going to have some sort of control. Cryptocurrency, all that stuff, yes, you can keep that for yourself as an individual, but you're talking about basically your own life raft. And if there is no infrastructure or economy that's functioning at the time, chaos is going to ensue. That's just a fact of the matter. We live in a more integrated society than we ever did before. It's not going to be clean lines. Yes. Oh, yeah. It looks like these states are unified blocks, but it isn't. You know that the cities side one way or the other. So logistically, you're going to have to deal with all this. You're going to, man, I keep doing that. Yes, Scooby Digits is right. Martial law, they can postpone the election and kind of make sure that Trump doesn't get elected. So, you're seeing how these lines are dividing. And I'm only saying this because a lot of people seem like this is what they want. So if this is what you want, you have to know what the repercussions are, because a lot of people don't understand how this is going to work and the aftermath of it, that even if there's some sort of victory, it's going to be extremely costly and the U.S. will lose its status as a superpower. You have now nuclear weapons that are distributed between two different factions at this point. Who knows if they'll be under control? It doesn't matter what the feds do at this point, because they're going to violate the Constitution in order to try to keep this country together. So posse comitatus, all that stuff, it's out the window. This is going to be a conflict. We saw the first Civil War played out. It didn't matter. It was battles everywhere. And it's not even going to play out like that. It's going to be small pockets of resistance. You're going to have basically chaos ensuing everywhere. The media is going to be pushing against any faction that's against the federal government and discredit them. And you're going to lose access to all that stuff. So that's going to be the first thing that happens. U.S. economy will collapse. Your dollar is going to be useless. We're going to have to figure out a way to trade and barter in this situation. That's going to push a lot of people against any sort of split, because the American people are not going to be willing to sacrifice that stuff. Let's be honest. And you're not going to find support for that. It's not going to work. I'm very cynical about this, because you might think that, well, hey, one side's got the guns, the other side doesn't believe in that. Kind of doesn't matter, because your economy is going to be in shambles. You're going to lose the status that the U.S. has now. Maybe some people are like, the government's too far gone, or the country's too far gone. It doesn't matter. We gotta start from scratch. I think you got to try to fix what we've got while we can. I think that we've got one or two more opportunities to do that with this election. And you got to see how that plays out. You really do, because this is the immediate consequence. So what's going to happen next? The U.S. is no longer a superpower. We have forces overseas now. What are they going to do? We have carrier battle groups. We have hundreds of military bases overseas. They're basically going to be isolated. So what happens to them? Do they come back? How do they have their own internal conflicts with all this stuff? So now we've got people overseas that have, basically they don't know what's going on. Do some of these fleets or bases become their own independent factions at this point and say, you know what? The mainland is gone. Like, we're going to fend for ourselves. And then you're really going to see who's going to win in this conflict. China's going to win in the conflict. That's who ultimately is going to win in this, because we've seen through the war in Ukraine, and, President Trump did talk about this with NATO, that the Europeans are not capable of fighting a land war. Yes, they had a fire lit under their ass with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They're decades away. 10 to 20 years away from being able to field a military that they could use to defend themselves. And let's be also honest, Europe is suffering from the same woke crisis that the United States is. So you have populations that are demoralized, that have no morality. You have a huge influx of not just illegal migrants, but they've imported essentially a large portion of the Middle Eastern population into Europe. So now you've got three factions that are chomping at the bit to get their action. One, you have Russia, which Russia can now escalate the situation, because if they don't have to worry about the U.S. using nuclear weapons to stop them, they could use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. They could cow the European Union. I don't think the Europeans are going to use nukes. The countries that have nukes, they're not going to use them against Russia, because they'll get annihilated, because Russia's got the largest nuclear missile force in the entire country, in the entire world. I'm sure a lot of those missiles don't work anymore, but you've got the UK and France that have nukes. Germany doesn't have nukes. So the UK and France probably have a few dozen between them. That's not going to do anything to stop Russia. It can cause a lot of damage, but they're going to get annihilated if they do anything about that. So the Europeans, they also have a tendency to cave to the new power in town. So whether they want to or not, at that point, they also don't have any natural resources because they've been eliminating their nuclear power plants stupidly. They were reliant on Russian natural gas. So now you're going to see that all evaporate because the U.S. is not going to be sending natural gas and oil at this point because we've got our own situation that we're dealing with domestically right now. So Europe is going to either cave to the Russians or they're going to fall apart because Iran is going to start influencing a lot of these migrants that have come into Europe. They have been taking advantage. We see the violence that they've had against Europeans, against women especially. So this is just going to escalate because now we don't have the U.S., the big daddy there to be able to help us out. NATO's all that we've got. And we have a NATO without an issue. So that's what's going to happen. Russia won't even really have to do anything. Let's be perfectly honest. I think the Europeans will play ball. So Russia's not going to invade or do anything like that. They are much weaker than we've thought, but they will definitely take advantage of the situation. And you'll see kind of the new world order start taking place. China, on the other hand, they're going to take over Taiwan. There's no doubt about that. They're going to go after Taiwan the second that they can. So they are going to go after Taiwan. They're going to obviously work with Iran. The Middle East, I don't know what would happen in the Middle East in this situation. It's possible that all the Middle Eastern countries finally turn on Israel because at this point, Israel doesn't have the United States to help protect them. So Israel is going to be fighting against everybody. Israel has nukes themselves. They obviously deny it, but we all know that they have a few dozen nukes. So are you going to have a nuclear exchange in the Middle East with Israel trying to defend itself? Iran is going to take advantage of the situation. Now they can basically attack Israel if they wanted to without any repercussions. They can hold the world's oil hostage because there's not going to be a U.S. fleet that is going to be defending the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf or anything like that. So global trade is going to be diminished. So who would move in this situation? The Chinese, who now have the largest navy in the world. So the Chinese, they'll invade Taiwan. That's not going to be an issue for them. The U.S. is not going to be able to stop them. They now have Taiwan. Taiwan will fall. It'll be a bloody conflict for them, even without the U.S. being involved. That's going to cost them a lot, but that's what's going to happen. So they're going to get Taiwan. That's going to control the chip manufacturing throughout the entire world and the high-tech industry. And at this point, the other Asian countries, again, without the United States, they're not going to be able to do anything because Japan, even though Japan is going to become the third largest military spender in the world in the next coming decade, it's in the decade. And again, all of these countries, whether it's the European Union or our Asian Pacific, countries that rely on us, who are they getting their weapons from? They are getting it from the U.S. military industrial complex because we're the only ones in the West that have the capacity to build these types of weapons and have the ammunition. The South Koreans have a pretty good military industrial complex. They're not going to be able to do very much. Are they going to have to deal with North Korea now, knowing that the U.S. isn't going to be there to help them out? That's another issue that we have. So you're going to have every rogue state take advantage of the power vacuum that the U.S. is going to leave there because of the civil conflict. So these are the second and third order repercussions. So the second order repercussions are the U.S. economy collapsing and essentially a depression in the middle of a conflict within the United States. Control for natural resources domestically. Businesses collapsing and failing. The third order repercussions are the global conflict that's going to ensue. So essentially, you're going to have either a third world war or you're basically going to see America's enemies take advantage of the power vacuum. So these are the things these are the things that you have to think about here. And the fact that anything that happens here is going to have consequences globally. And there are some countries that may be safe. South America may actually be the best off, maybe the best off in this situation because nobody's going to want to go to the U.S. while this is happening. And South America doesn't really have any military alliances with, South American countries don't have military alliances with other nations. Maybe you have Brazil. They've got a socialist government right now. Maybe they would side with, they're part of BRICS. So the Chinese and Russians as economic alliance. So they're probably going to be okay. They're not necessarily going to be on the side that you want them to be, but They're going to be with allied with the new top dog, so they'll be okay. Argentina may be okay with their new president, but they're going to essentially be isolated down there themselves. They have a lot of agricultural resources, so that's going to be it. Those are going to be your places to go. We know that the elites are going to bail out and go to New Zealand. That's been their bunker for a while. A lot of them probably were planning on this because we know that the U.S. is in a controlled decline. The elites throughout the world, the globalists, the corporations, politicians, the cabal, so to speak, there has been a planned decline of the U.S. They use the money from the American taxpayer to fund their agendas, and the U.S. has been the piggy bank to do all of this. We've essentially become the Roman Empire, and just like the Roman Empire, it started falling apart and collapsing, and then the vultures came in and took it over. So that's what we're looking at. So this is why, as much as the corruption within the United States and the government and the problems that we have here, these are the things that you would have to look forward to, because I have no doubt that this is exactly how it would play out here. So what can we do? What can we do? This is a question that, I've been posed, and, I had this discussion with a friend earlier, and it was very cynical. I actually felt terrible about having the conversation because it seems hopeless, but it's only hopeless if we cave to this and we don't pay attention to what the issues are, and if we don't get involved in the political process. Now, is it possible that things have escalated to the point where we can't do anything about it? It could be. It could be. I'm a little bit more optimistic because of how many people have started waking up to the issues. Ever since the pandemic, a lot more people are engaged. They see the issues that this country is facing. We have good young leaders that are coming up through the ranks, like Vivek Ramaswamy, which, if you saw him on The Breakfast Club earlier this week, he absolutely dominated that show. I recommend everybody watch it. And we have more young people actually in Gen Z that are siding and that would vote for former President Trump. Is Trump going to be the be-all, end-all savior that everybody wants? No, absolutely not. Trump is imperfect. He's getting older every day, too. He's going to slow down. And in 4 years, who knows what state Trump is going to be in if he's the president. This is why he needs guys like Vivek and his administration to be able to carry the mantle, people that actually know that they have a plan. Trump's plan is, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to bust some skulls. I'm going to fire a lot of people. Vivek has their strategy in order to do that the right way. If you've seen him, how he talks about the FBI, these are the things that we need to pay attention to, because ultimately, if the globalists win, they're just going to continue the demise of the U.S. They're going to have more illegal immigration. They're going to collapse this country, and their goal is, which we always know what it was, is to turn the U.S. into an authoritarian style regime similar to China. They've got the Constitution that will stop them to a certain extent, but at the same time, what we see in this country is not left wing, really. We love to talk about the communists and everything like that. Normal people on the ground think that they're socialists and that they're communists, and that's how they buy it. But one of the best memes that I've ever seen is they're just stick figures, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen them before, where one's got the hammer and the sickle and the other one's got the swastika. And then they've got a baby, and then that becomes the left. It's really the uniparty, to be honest. Or the Democrat Party is in the meme, but it's the uniparty. Because what are we dealing with? We're really dealing with fascism, because we're seeing the unity between corporate interests and the government. And they will create basically a technocracy where you'll have constant surveillance. If they have a digital currency, they will be able to monitor all your transactions. We've seen people get deplatformed. We've seen what happened to the Canadian truckers, where their resources were taken away. We see this in the gun industry. My gun people, I know you guys know all about this, about how many times we've seen gun stores, gun manufacturers, anybody like that, where they can't get payment processors. They can't do it because banks refuse to do business with them, and it causes huge problems. So if we have the government basically encouraging this and in bed with these corporations, which they are to a vast extent right now, then you're going to see this get even worse. So you will see your rights eroded in such a way that the government can say, well, we're not the ones doing this. The corporations can do whatever they want. That's what they've done. They've abdicated their role. We become so reliant on social media and other sources for our information and for our communication that the government doesn't even have to do that much. We saw that they encouraged disinformation during the previous election, during the pandemic. So this was all a field run for these things that they want. They want a central bank digital currency. They want to be able to monitor all communications at all times and be able to choose what you think, choose what you watch, and discredit you and shame you if you don't toe the line. The same way that the communist revolution worked in China. So you had the Red Brigades, the Red Guard running around, which was basically the youth and the students. They would go and force people into struggle sessions. They would commit mass murder. And they would push that. Is that going to happen here in the U.S.? It may not happen exactly, but nowadays they will use the fact that everything is online to discredit you and take away your resources. And if you can't access your bank accounts, you can't access your digital currency, you're hosed, because there's not going to be anyone that accepts fiat currency. So that's what we would have to look forward to. It would become an authoritarian state controlled by technology. So what can we do? Some people don't like to hear it. You got one choice right now in the immediate. We don't have Vivek. He's not running for president. He's out of the race. You got to vote for Donald Trump. And look, for a long time, I didn't like Trump either. I'll admit it. I thought Trump was in with these people when he ran in 2016. But I saw a lot of the policies that he made. I saw the exposure. I think it wasn't necessarily how Trump exposed it, because a lot of it was, I personally think Trump wasn't sure he was going to win the first election. So we give him a lot of credit for things. He obviously made big mistakes when it comes to gun control, things like that. He was not good on that. A lot of my Second Amendment friends will never forgive him for that. A lot of people will never forgive him for Project Warp Speed and the creation of the vax and all that stuff. Totally understand that. A lot of people hate his rhetoric and how he picks fights that he really shouldn't. I think he's gotten a little bit better with that. Fact of the matter is, at a minimum, he exposed the powers that be and made them go crazy. And that's why we know what we know now. Had he never happened, we would have just blissfully been walking into an authoritarian state and woken up one day and been like, well, crap, I can't believe that this happened. Like, now we're hosed. It's like 1984 here. So that's the choice you've got. And it's going to come down to the cabinet that he has and empowering these people. So what do? We got to make our own demands of him too. You can't, he's not a savior. He's a human being. He's imperfect, and they're gunning for him every day. So you have to encourage him to make good decisions, choose a good cabinet, choose good people around him, and then support people that will carry the mantle after he's out of office. And that's what we need to do. We need to, a lot of inflation is on him because of the mass government spending. That's part of the problem too. We have to rein in government spending. So that's true. But Mike, it's the only choice that we've got right now. That's it. We're down to two candidates. It's not going to change anymore. It's not going to, we're not going to get the genie out of that bottle. So this is what we have to do. Those are your choices. The Libertarian Party is not going to win this time around. They won't. It's going to take the Libertarian Party serious time to go there. And the Libertarian Party is basically split into factions between the Mises Caucus guys that actually know what they're talking about, and then the crazy libertarians that believe in open borders too. So you're not going to you're not going to find this. Oh, thank you, Rebel Scum. I'm glad that you found me here. I've been on CobraCast before. And I appreciate it if Jeremy's giving me a shout out. That's awesome. He does a good job over there. He's been getting ridiculous numbers. So this is pretty much where we are. So I think that's kind of the solution. A lot of people don't like to hear that because they're like, oh man, Trump, you're putting everything on this guy. I was like, no, I'm not putting everything on him. It's up to us, the American people, to also help. And part of that goes to my quote that I beat like a dead horse all the time. And that is, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. The fact of the matter is, we are here today because we've abdicated our responsibility as citizens of the United States. And that's not just people on the left that want the government to give them everything. It is people on the right and people in the libertarian factions, because We've become too busy. What is the difference? What did the founders do? A lot of these people had normal jobs. They were scholars. They had their own, property and businesses that they ran, and they still took the time out of the day to do what they needed to do. And that is not an excuse that we can have anymore. I don't have time. I got to do things for my kids. I got to do this. I can't run for office. I can't go there. I can't get involved here. This is why we are where we are, because we were too busy wanting to live perfect lives under the system that people were able to take away our power. This is why the government has become more authoritarian, because we allowed it. We weren't paying attention. We were fat and happy in our homes. We were doing our own things, and we allowed it to happen. Why do the schools teach what they do today? Because parents do not pay attention to what their kids are going through. They don't go to school board meetings. They don't pay attention to that stuff. Why are there sanctuary cities and all these things? Because people don't go to their city council meetings or pay attention to any of that stuff. The time for excuses is over, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing else that we can do here. The options are allow the country to collapse into authoritarianism or allow it to fall apart, and that leads to global chaos. That's essentially what we've got. So it is up to us to get involved in all these things. Sometimes the involvement is just trying to educate people. And that's another way that we've been too comfortable about certain things. I understand some people do have extenuating circumstances where they can't do anything. They're reliant on their family. They're working paycheck to paycheck, all of those things. But we have to let our voices be heard. You have to at least, you may not want to get into an argument with somebody, but you got to let them know. You have to spread the word. You can't be afraid of being out there, putting yourself out there. It doesn't mean throwing every, conspiracy theory or everything that you see, but not being afraid to speak truth to power, not being afraid to get involved in these things. And a lot of times it's engaging people pretty politely, because a lot of times we've been characterized, people that believe in freedom, we've been caricatured essentially by the media, that we're all like redneck gun nuts. And that's the stereotype. And there's a lot of redneck gun nuts that are not bad people at all either. So that's another stereotype, but that's how we've been pushed. They've kind of backed us into a corner and characterized us in a certain way. So we have to try to use positive energy. And again, I'm going to keep going back to Vivek, because I think that he's the one, that really exemplifies this the most. We saw people protest at his different events. He brings them in. You kind of kill them with kindness, so to speak. That's the way to do it. And the problem is that we have so many people, and I see it all the time. I see it in different chats. I see it online. You can't argue with these people. You can't do anything. Have you run into these people? Have you actually tried? Because a lot of times this is what's affecting all of our society, that we see videos on social media or in the news that show the worst possible examples of people on either side of the aisle. Let's be honest. Let's see it. I talked about this with men and women last week when we were talking about that guy that, wanted to split the check with a woman that he asked out, and how they want the sexes to fight against each other. Part of the problem is that we just don't talk. We don't talk. We don't want to talk. And we assume that nobody else wants to talk. Everybody's making these assumptions. And I can tell you, I've spoken to a lot of people on the left who are very receptive, because most of the time they don't know what I am. I know it's crazy. You guys watch me every day. You know that I am hardcore in my beliefs of freedom in the Constitution, but it all depends on the approach that you have. And you have to have some faith here. There are a lot of stupid people out there. There's a lot of people that are just ignorant because they don't pay attention to what's going on. Why do so many people vote for the Democrats? Because they have no idea what the Democrats are actually doing, and they watch the news. They don't even think of themselves as like far leftists. They just happen to support the cause. And there are people on the right that are blind too, that are neocons that never saw a war that they didn't love. And they're always rah, rah, rah. Yeah, these guys must have done something, so we have to go to war. And they'll support all of that. No, we've got to break through all of the echo chambers, and we actually have to try. And some of that means getting frustrated, dealing with people that are genuinely stupid, and dealing with people that will not listen to you. Some of it is getting on platforms like this. I started the Locked and Loaded Latinos years ago in order to break through a lot of this stuff, to show a different example. And I'm proud of the work that that we did in the past with what this channel did. I see so many of you here. That, started watching after I became a part of Geeks and Gamers. And that was kind of always my goal. I didn't want to join Geeks and Gamers necessarily because it's like, well, it's cool. It's a big channel. We can make money. Jeremy's a cool guy. And we get to meet like Gina Carano and all that stuff. That's not why I joined Geeks and Gamers. When I was given the opportunity, I knew that it would allow this platform here to be elevated, to get a new audience and to educate people on the Constitution, freedom, and the things that are going on here, and maybe have people that are apolitical join it. I'm not trying to convince you to believe what I believe in, but at the end of the day, I'm fighting so that you can believe what you want and you're not force-fed these things, so that you do have a choice at the end of the day. And that's ultimately what freedom is. It's the freedom of having the choice to live your life without government interference and to live the life that you want. But freedom is not free. Freedom isn't free. A lot of times we talk about that in the sacrifices that our troops make. That's not the only sacrifice. You don't have to make the ultimate sacrifice in this situation. The freedom that you give up is your time. And we don't use our time wisely to be involved in civics, to be involved in our local government, to be involved in our state government, and then ultimately influence the federal government. These are the things that we have to be involved with. This was the kind of the difference between the founder generation and the generation of patriots today. We don't get involved. And then, so we want to sit here, and I know there's a lot of people out here that believe this. So you would rather have sat here basically not doing shit and complaining all the time, but not getting off your ass to, go to some sort of rally, or maybe go on Twitter and talk about stuff. Maybe do this. Maybe you're a better orator than even I am, and you could have the greatest podcast that can influence millions of people, and that is how you contribute. But we don't get involved. And then so many people are like, they're sitting in their house waiting for the Civil War to happen. Oh my gosh, that's it. So I will jump out when I need to, basically when the worst possible scenario happens, but in the other steps that could have prevented such a situation, I won't do crap. That's kind of insane when you think about it, isn't it? I'd rather go out there when the shit hits the fan than to go to my local, to my local city council meeting or school board meeting right now. That's the problem. That is the problem, that we don't get involved. And it maybe it is too late, but we got to at least try it, because I can tell you, I don't want to be clearing houses in an urban area and fighting against my neighbor. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at all. Yes, the Second Amendment is there as a check against a tyrannical government. Absolutely. That doesn't mean that you jump to that without using your First Amendment right, without using your ability to vote and all the other the rights that we have in the Constitution. Learn the Constitution. Teach it to people. Never let them use the argument either, because this is what they'll always try to do. Well, the founders were a bunch of hypocrites. Some of them owned slaves, blah, blah, blah. So everything that they say, or they, yes, they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, but they excluded certain minority populations from having those rights. Yeah, they sure did. Do you still think that those rights are invalid? That you shouldn't have the ability to say what you want, to petition your government, to have a free press, to own firearms, to defend yourself and your family, to, have, not have troops quartered in your home, to have a right to a trial by jury? Are those all good things or not? Because I really don't give a crap who wrote those. The fact of the matter is, the goal today is to make sure that everyone has those rights that are given to us not by the government, not by the Constitution, but by our existence, by our Creator, God, and whatever you believe in. If you don't believe in God, that's totally fine. I think having faith helps in these situations. I think that's another reason why we've fallen so far. We don't have a moral code that binds us anymore. So we live in a society where people feel like nihilism has taken over, where they feel like there's no repercussions to anything, that I'm going to die and I'm going to go into oblivion anyway. So I'm just going to do whatever the hell that I want while I'm alive. That leads to a society that falls apart under, within itself, leads to gluttony, leads to suffering because people don't care. They don't have any morality. So why should they do anything? Why should they be good people? And yes, human beings tend to go down the path of evil if you allow it, but we don't have to. We don't have to. We have to have that moral code, that fiber that is within all of us, and choose to do good, choose to exhaust all of these resources that we have at our disposal. You can prepare for the worst. Lord knows I do. You guys know that I have, you guys know I get trained. I've got guns. It is what it is. A lot of those guns I have for fun. Some of those guns are, hey, if bad things happen, I'm prepared for it. And that's why you practice every day. I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. I'd rather just go to the range all the time, do 3-gun competitions and like show off my cool guns to my buddies. And then we all go to the range and have a good time. That's what I would like them to be used for. But they're there just in case that's not what's in the cards. But I'm not going to be the one that helps contribute to all of that falling apart. So these are the things that we need to do. Can't be afraid. I can tell you that over the years, my faith wasn't as strong as it could have been. I had a moral code that helped me a lot, but I had lost a lot of my faith. And over the last few months, obviously, you guys know what happened to me. I've rediscovered my faith. I've gone to church and, I have faith in Christ. I have friends that support me. I have family that supports me. You guys have supported me a lot. And you have to have introspection when things happen to you in your life. You have to have some introspection because it's easy to blame everybody else for all of your problems. And in some cases, things aren't your fault, but you always need to have some sort of introspection. What could I have done better in these situations? What did I do wrong? How can I improve myself at this point? Now that that I'm here. And that's what I did. I rediscovered my faith. You guys know I've worked out a lot more than ever. I have found all of these things. I've leaned on my friends and my family more than ever, which is something that I had taken for granted for a long time because I thought I didn't need to do that. But through crisis, you can find strength, and through God, all things are possible. Don't take the quote literally. You know, it doesn't mean that you can't fly if you pray or anything like that, but you can find the strength and go through life with your convictions. I talked about a lot of terrible things that could happen here. I talked about a lot of things that are terrible that could happen here. Don't confuse my cynicism or my realism with hopelessness. I don't have hopelessness. I'm here talking to 75 people right now. It's not as much as Cobra Cast. It's not as much as Tim Pool or the news media, but I'm here because I believe in these things and I want to have a positive influence on this situation. And I want all of you to know that you're not alone out there. You're not alone. Some of you know all the things that I'm talking about. You may align with my thought process. Some of you had no idea. So those of you that don't know, I want to educate you. I want to let you know that you're not alone out there. So, and that you can find faith. You don't have to live in despair, and you don't have to be afraid of relying on your friends. I spoke with somebody that was kind of in a similar situation to what I went to. And I was like, do you talk to your old friends? Because you're kind of around a lot of people right now that are somewhat toxic. And they told me, no, I'm afraid to talk to my friends because I'm kind of, I feel like I've failed in a lot of cases. And I haven't spoken to some of them in years. Forgiveness and grace are more powerful forces than we give credit for. I can tell you that there are some friends that I did not speak to for 12 years because I was engrossed in what was going on in my life, which that happens. Look, you're always going to be engrossed in your relationships and things like that, but you can't take for granted. You have to have that balance, and you can't forget the people that got you to where you are today. And that's one of the things that I did. I took a lot of people for granted. Thankfully, my friends have a lot of grace, and I picked up where I left off with them, more than a decade ago. And my best friends are there for me every single day. I go to church with them every week. We go out to eat. We go to the gun range. We play video games and all that great stuff. My family. You guys have seen how close I am with my family. You've seen my father on stream, on a stream with me. You see my brother, Commander N, play on basically every gaming stream that I've had lately. I'm not playing a single player game. Embrace your family. Count your blessings. You may feel like you've lost a lot, like you don't have enough. Find the one person at least that is there that knows that you love them. Have gratitude. Gratitude is extremely important every day. This is becoming like a sermon now. I apologize. But have gratitude for the things that you have. Your health, maybe it's your health. Maybe you're not healthy and you're in a different situation. Find things that are positive that you can look out to, or else you will fall into this pit of despair. So this is what you have. Scooby Digits, absolutely. Get right with your God. Get right with God. Get your house in order. Get in shape. Keep your health and be prepared. Talk to those who have an ear to hear, but be mindful you won't reach everyone with the truth. That's absolutely true. And you don't want to impose your will on everybody either. You don't. But be receptive to people. Accept that you may be wrong. Have people around you that can challenge your opinions and even your own thought processes, because that's how you know if your moral code is up to snuff too. Because I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said this. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Question with boldness even the existence of God. And what that means is you have to question everything, and you need people that will challenge you to prove that you're right. Sometimes you just need to be tested. Even when I was talking about this topic earlier with somebody, I value their opinion extremely highly, very highly, this person. And they've challenged my own opinions, my own thoughts, to question the things that I've said on this show. And I love it. I really do. I love that more than anything, because it makes me think, and it either reinforces my own beliefs or my own opinions, or it allows me to approach things from a different perspective. And I think that is so important. That is so important. Rebel Scum says, let's see this comment. I don't have friends in my life. I was friendless in school. I don't trust people. I have people who stab me in the back. A young person. I don't know where to start with finding friends. You can start here. It's clear that you have a certain amount of beliefs. There's a lot of good places you can go. I think that I don't have a Discord or anything like that. Maybe I should start one, and then you guys can intermingle there. But I know I met a lot of good people in the Geeks and Gamers Discord. People that I consider friends, people that have helped me or I've helped them, and I think that's a great place. They play video games together all the time. I see that it's become like almost like a fraternity over there. Not everyone's a dude, so take fraternity as friendship, the term brotherhood too. We can find common ground. That's kind of what, Eric July and others like him did. The fellowship, if you want to call it that, the 199, whatever it is, you can find people that have common, things in common with you that you can try to have fun with. Sometimes that's video games. Sometimes it's just going to the movies. Sometimes it's going to the shooting range and joining a local shooting club and talking to people there. You can't be afraid. Now, you don't want to be naive. I understand you have to protect yourself. People can take advantage of you. Look, sometimes the people that you love the most are the ones that will hurt you the most too. This is always a risk that we take. It doesn't mean that you're cynical. Just because, I'll be honest, just because my marriage didn't work out, it doesn't mean that I've lost faith in relationships and that I don't want one anymore. On the contrary, you have to learn from the loss in your life, and you can't let it bring you down. And part of that is having that faith and having people around you that really care about you. Wayfarer dropping the 787. That is the area code for Puerto Rico's phone numbers. So have your boundaries, value yourself. You got to value yourself above all, your own health, your own mental well-being, your own faith. So yes, you got to get right with yourself, but allow people to come in. Don't rely on them for everything if you don't want to. But when you find people that you can trust, and eventually you'll get to them, have grace too, because we're all human. Some days, maybe you got home a little bit late and you don't want to talk. you know, you don't want to talk to somebody. So that's how it is. And Rebel Scum, that's kind of what the fellowship is for too. You can talk politics, you can talk video games, you can do all this stuff. You can shoot the shit, but at the end of the day, you will see that people that are really your friends, you can get along with. I mean, look at when I've been on Tuesday night's main event or anything like that. We talk a lot of shit. When we play video games, we talk a lot of crap. We make fun of each other. Some people get made fun of a little bit more than others, but they kind of ask for it. Let's be honest. I don't get made fun of that much, but that's because I can take, you got to be able to take shit if you want to make it sometimes. That's just the way it is. And when you can find people that you can talk garbage with and you're not hurt by it, then you know you've arrived. And that's pretty much where it is. Don't be afraid to find people. Don't set your expectations too high, but have an open heart. So, this did not go the way that I thought. Like I said, I had a certain way that I thought that this was going to go earlier in the day, but I really like where this went right now. And I'm proud of this discussion that we've had here today. And I will definitely thank somebody for this after the show. And I'll thank, my family and friends too, for always being supportive of the things that I do. So, wow, we got through an hour and 20 minutes so far, almost an hour and a half. And I love what I'm seeing in the chat right now. You guys are awesome. So become friends, get involved with that. Maybe I got to have like a member stream or something too. And we can all play Fortnite, even though, these people that are like bots and shit are going to jump in there and ruin everything, but we can figure it out. We need a drunk stream with Rolo and Ryan. Oh my God, you wouldn't like that. I will say this for Ryan. He's the only other guy that knows the expanded universe probably more than I do with Star Wars, because he's actually read all the books, which I have as well. It's been a few years since I've read them all, but everything from Darth Caedus to the Yuzon Vong, obviously the true Thrawn saga, all the Jedi Order books that came after, Abeloth, all that great stuff. Really great content that Disney should have used, and now they are trying to shoehorn different aspects of it in a terrible manner. So I'm sure I could have a great discussion with him about the expanded universe. And I actually have a few times that I was hanging out at the house. So CNT Design and Arm says, if you don't like smoking, drinking, rough jokes, and language, you don't know me for sure. Well, dude, that's like the gun industry. It's cigars. It's cigars, whiskey or bourbon, or beers if you don't want liquor, and making fun of people that own Glocks or that own 1911s, because for some reason they always hate each other, and I happen to own both. Well, I don't own a real Glock. I own a Shadow Systems pistol, which is much better than the real Glock. It's what you turn your Glock into when you realize that your Glock is a boring piece of shit. No, I'm kidding. Glocks aren't pieces of shit. They're like Toyota Camrys, basically. They're not going to break on you. They're usually going to work, and you can find parts for them everywhere. So, and you can turn them into the gun of your dreams, or you can just leave them the way they are. My old man's got a Glock, so, and I'm the one that recommended it to him. So I did, the X-Wing Capanova, the X-Wing books were my favorite. I loved Rogue Squadron, Wedge Antilles, all those guys. I obviously loved Kyle Katarn as a character in the Jedi Knight series as well. Dark Forces, all that great stuff. So Disney's destroyed all that, but we can go back. We can go back and read those books and check those out and have good memories when it comes to that. The Star Wars universe, the expanded universe, is better than any of the movies, when we look deep into it. So I had to do it, Scooby. I couldn't be that nice. Come on, I got to talk some crap here. This is becoming all kumbaya and stuff. So, but I love it. So let's move on to the next subject. I'll try not to go over. I had a lot of things that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully I won't go over. I think this was a worthwhile discussion. If we don't finish everything that I wanted to talk about tonight, it was totally worth it. You don't get Discord, Novella Princess. I didn't get Discord either. I'm pretty much still a boomer when it comes to Discord. I know how to get into voice chats and send messages, but I don't know how to like really set up my own server. There is somewhere on Discord the remnants of a locked and loaded Latino server that will have to become the Puerto Rican Pistolero server one day. I don't know how involved I'll be in it. I don't necessarily have time for that, especially when I'm talking about we need to make time to be civically engaged. Well, I can, I guess I got to prioritize things here. So the Discord may not be one, but I'll definitely get the Discord up and running, and then you guys can jump in there and shoot the shit. Have voice chats and all that stuff. If the G&G one is not one that you want to join, or maybe you don't even know what Geeks and Gamers is, because it's not what this channel is necessarily about, even though I seem to play games here now more than anything else, but it is what it is. It definitely is. I can see that. Rebel Scum. I love that you put the 1776 in there as well. Let's go to, I'm going to briefly go over, obviously with the border crisis, the Republicans are going to file articles of impeachment on Homeland Security Director Mayorkas. I'll go through this article real quick, just kind of stating the facts. Let's make this bigger for you guys so you can read along, and we'll just move this a little bit. Or I'll move myself. It's easier to just move me. There we go. I'll go on this side. Washington, House Republicans on Sunday released 2 articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, as they vowed to swiftly push forward with election year efforts to oust him over what they call his failure to manage the U.S.-Mexico border. And I got to circle back for a second. Remember, I started the show talking about restraint. You guys know what I was talking about. Show restraint in your discussions with people. Show restraint in your desire to, for things to escalate. We have to have some restraint here. We have to be responsible. We got to get the message out there, but show restraint. Show some restraint there. All right, back to the article. Push forward with election year efforts to oust him over what they call his failure to manage the U.S.-Mexico border. As you guys know, I usually try to read sources that are not from right-wing sites. So I try not to go to OAN, Fox News, or Breitbart, just so that I use the media against itself and see, and then we can kind of dissect if they're being truthful or if they're playing it straight. This rare step against the cabinet member drew outrage from Democrats and the agency as a politically motivated stunt lacking the constitutional basis to remove Mayorkas from office. I've got my cup here. It's not a Stanley. I did not fall into that fad, but the metal tumblers are legit. If you don't have one, I recommend it. They're pretty awesome. Maybe you can get one from Jay. I used to love the one that I had on the show, but sometimes you can't keep certain things. Republicans contend Mayorkas is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors that amount to a willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law on immigration and a breach of the public trust. Impeachment, they say, is Congress's only viable option. Alejandro and Mayorkas willfully and systemically refused to comply with the immigration laws, failed to control the border to the detriment of national security, compromised public safety, and violated the rule of law and separation of powers in the Constitution to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. The impeachment resolution says, only once in American history has a cabinet secretary been impeached. William Belknap, President Ulysses Grant's war secretary in 1876 over kickbacks in government contracts. So this shit's been going on for like 150 years, man. In this instance, over the claim, going after an official for a policy dispute, in this instance, over the claim that Mayorkas is not upholding immigration laws, is unprecedented. The crisis is pretty unprecedented. So, Carla makes a great point. She's already reading my mind. She knows where I'm going. Ever since taking control of the House, that's why she's a mod, of the House in 2023, Republicans have pushed to impeach Mayorkas. Sunday's announcement comes as their other impeachment drive to impeach Democrat President Joe Biden in relation to his son's business dealings has struggled to advance. So, is the impeachment legit, or is it a political stunt? Let's ask ourselves that. Do I think that Biden and a lot of his administration should be impeached? Sure, but we don't control the Senate, or the Republican Party does not control the Senate. And without, as was pointed out by Carla, 2/3 vote of the Senate, you can't oust somebody from office. So Republicans are doing this knowing that they can't do anything because, first of all, they would definitely not have 2/3 in order to impeach somebody. They don't even have the majority in Congress. So are articles of impeachment going to even be, or I should say Senate, are they even going to be brought out by Chuck Schumer in the General Senate Assembly? No, they're not. They're not. So it's two ways. It's a moral choice to say like, like we're trying to do something here. And it may be done through legitimate grounds. I agree. Mayorkas is derelict in his duty. Should be pushed out. But this is not going to do anything. So you can look at it as political theater if you like. Nothing's going to amount of this. We see Republicans, we see politicians do this all the time. They'll basically do something token and say like, oh yeah, see, we're trying to do something. Some people are okay with that. They're like, well, even if we can't do anything, we have to at least look like we're trying to do something. We've got, it's the moral high ground. We've got to do this. Okay, whatever. Maybe you should spend your time doing other things, but it is what it is. So yeah, all we can do is change things to the election at this point. There's nothing we can do as long as Biden is president. He's going to be president until January 20th of next year. So that's it. Sorry, I had some gum there. So let's move on to the next one. This is going to kind of be a lightning round here. I already talked about global conflict. Let's see. What's the other thing? So we have an update. This happened a few hours ago. A drone attack in Jordan killed 3 U.S. service members. I believe the 25 others were injured. President Biden blamed Iran-backed militias for the attack, which will escalate the already extremely volatile situation in the region. So, what should the U.S. response be? You guys know that I'm hugely anti-war at this point. I was the guy that back in the day, I was in high school when the war in Iraq occurred. I had a lot of friends that went and fought, that were older than me, that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've told me the stories of everything that happened. I was like, yeah, of course we had to go in Afghanistan. Different story. Obviously, the 9/11 attackers, Osama bin Laden, justified conflict, poorly mishandled. The extraction obviously was a debacle and national embarrassment. Iraq was a different story. At this point, I think we can agree that Iraq should not have happened. I think that Iran is empowered because Iraq was decimated by the U.S., their military. Decimated is not the right word because that's 1 in every 10, technically. I know some jerk in the chat, you're not a jerk, is going to point out, well, actually, decimation is eliminating 1 of every 10. All right, it's a great word. We annihilated. We destroyed their military. We ousted Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein and his Baathists hated the Iranians. They were fighting a war with them in the 1980s, a war which we, the United States, gave weapons to Iraq to do, because we obviously hated the mullahs a lot more after they overthrew our puppet, the Shah of Iran, who, yes, he was an American puppet. Like, it is what it is. Like, let's be honest. The CIA basically installed him and kept his regime going, but Iran was a stable country. But you can't fuck around with a nation's government and not expect repercussions. We're paying the consequences of essentially 100 years of terrible foreign policy in the Middle East perpetrated by the West. It was the British and the French at first by not giving the Arabs the land that they wanted after World War I when they helped us. Lawrence of Arabia and all that stuff. If you played Battlefield 1, then you may know some of this. And then, obviously, the partitioning of the Middle East after World War II, World War I and World War II was a total debacle. We split countries up in ways that didn't make any sense ethnically, and that's why we have all these internal conflicts in these countries and why the Middle East is always in turmoil, because it was essentially set up to be that way. There's a great video from What If Alt Hist that goes through this about why the Middle East is destroyed. Actually, it is... he's got a lot of great videos on that. I recommend watching his channel. Gosh, I forgot. I can see his icon in my head. Maybe you guys can point it out. He's got millions of followers and always does like geopolitical discussions, talking about how the borders in the Middle East were basically perpetuated the failures that we see there today. So This is what's going on. So shouldn't have gone in there, whatever. So Iran now is being able to do whatever the hell they want because there is no other counter to them. So it is what it is. So now we have these attacks. Iran-backed militias are attacking, obviously, American assets throughout the Middle East because of U.S. support and backing of Israel in their conflict in Gaza. And these are some of the repercussions. So let's say more than 24 injured by a drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan near the border with Syria on January 28th, according to U.S. Central Command. This attack marked the first time U.S. troops were killed in the Middle East since the beginning of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war on October 7th. It's also the first attack on American troops in Jordan since that conflict erupted. President Joe Biden and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin blamed the attack on Iranian-backed militias. We'll hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing, said Biden. Austin later echoed that sentiment in a statement of his own. CENTCOM did not say who launched the drones or the name of the branch of the troops killed and injured. The Islamic Resistance, a loose-knit group of Iranian-backed militias, said that it attacked 3 U.S. bases in Syria, including the Al Tanaf, as well as the Israeli Zevulun naval facility in the port of Haifa. Quote, the Islamic Resistance confirms that it will continue to destroy enemy strongholds, said the group. So what do we do in this situation? I just don't like getting into any conflicts that Biden is going to be in charge of. We already know how bad that's worked out for us and how bad it will continue to work out for us. You guys know my policy position here. I think we should leave the Middle East. We're not going to do it. We have American assets there. There's no point in us having that many bases here. We can sell weapons to Israel if we want to. We don't necessarily have to have military assets there all the time. It's asking for trouble because the Middle East will never be stabilized. It cannot be stabilized the way that it exists because of the way that it was created, essentially, the borders that we have now. It's not going to happen. So if there's a way that we can extricate ourselves, we probably should. And where is most of this global shipping going anyway? It's going to Asia, and it's going to the Chicoms. So why don't the Chicoms try to defend some of this stuff? They want to be a superpower. Let them deal with this crap in the Middle East if they want to. You know? They're reliant on the Middle East for oil. We are independent with oil. I think, see, here's the problem. This is where, and I'm kind of going on an aside here, as I always do. I always go on these tangents and these rants. Why is the U.S. in the position that we're in? Because we like to mess around, because we've basically learned no lessons from the Europeans and how they effed up the entire Middle East, and now we want to get involved all the time. A lot of that is money through the military-industrial complex, corruption, things like that. Yes, I understand that. The green initiatives in this country are killing us as well. We are one of the largest oil producers in the world. If not, we may be the largest oil producer at this point. We can become self-sufficient. Why don't we drill more and sell our oil to the Europeans and our allies? Why don't we, unlike what just happened now, Joe Biden did the opposite, cutting off natural gas exports to countries that we like and restricting American companies from doing so? The Europeans are reliant on natural gas that comes from Russia. They were for a long time. They should be buying it from us. They should be buying oil from us. We shouldn't be relying on the Middle East. Our allies shouldn't be relying on the Middle East. If the Chinese want to buy Middle Eastern oil, they can go ahead and do it. More power to them. They can deal with the shit show that the Middle East is. The fact of the matter is the U.S. has vast oil and natural gas deposits. We have vast deposits of lithium, which is used to make all these electric cars and all the electronic devices that we know and love here, that we rely upon in modern society. Why do we continue to deal with countries that hate us and that we have basically effed up ourselves? It makes no sense. It makes no sense because the powers that be don't care. It's not supposed to make sense. It's about money. That's what it is. It's all about the money. And again, this is where being politically engaged helps us. We have to push back against these bullshit green policies. Do we want a clean environment? Absolutely. I love going to national parks. I love being in nature. I don't want to see trash there. I don't want to see oil spills. Nobody wants to see that. We can make an effort to avoid those things and do our best. But the fact of the matter is that the biggest polluters in the world are China and India. They have more than a third of the world's population. The U.S. has a fraction of the pollution that those countries have. We've gotten much better. Our cars are more efficient. We've made advancements in technology. and we do a better job. But part of it is that we export our stuff to those countries. We used to do the recycling shit. Recycling goes to China. China doesn't have the capacity to do it. They don't care. It was all a sham to make people feel better about themselves, that they were doing something about it. Let's actually do something here that benefits us, the American people, and our allies geopolitically. Let's push our politicians and our corporations to do these things. Don't fall for what the green agenda is asking for. It's all a sham. It is. It's all a sham. It's bullshit. So this is what we need to do. It's a pretty simple solution. Then we don't have to deal with Iran. Then we don't have to deal with all this stuff. Israel is a very powerful country. If we want to continue to give them weapons and deal with the situation in the Middle East, we can go ahead and do that. Fact of the matter is that in the past, the Israelis were able to fight against 3 countries and they quadrupled their territory. I think the Israelis should have kept the Sinai, but they gave it back. They gave territory back to Egypt. Egypt is pretty good to Israel at this point, so it kind of worked out. But let the Israelis do what they're going to do. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. We don't need to have a million military bases there. And actually benefit our allies and the American people. That's really what I want out of all of this. Let's have a geopolitical policy that actually makes sense and that is America first. Oh my goodness, it's such a terrible thing. But this is what we do. We keep perpetuating these things. We put our men and women, our service members in harm's way for what? For nothing. That's really what it is. It's for nothing, because we keep getting into these crises that we either purposefully get ourselves into because of greed, a need for power, territory, whatever you want to call it, or for stupidity, because it doesn't even make any sense. And it could be that the quest for power leads to stupid decisions. They could both be hand in hand. Never blame on malice what can be attributed to stupidity. So the saying goes. And, we already have the usual suspects asking for war against Iran and all this stuff. That's what they want. And then what happens if we're in war with Iran? We're not in a position. Man, I'm going to go on another rant, aren't I? Man, it's been bad tonight. We're not in a position to properly go against Iran. Why? Because a few years ago, we could have attacked if we wanted to. And I don't think it would have been the right move. We never should have gone into Iraq in the first place. So that was our big mistake. But you're telling me that we had tens of thousands, like 100,000 troops between Iraq and Afghanistan, and we had Iran on both sides. Turkey was a much better ally at the time because Erdogan hadn't gone to his Islamofascism that he's been moving towards. And we had more allies in the Middle East. So we could have invaded Iran from multiple vectors, 4 different sides, and we already had troops that were combat proven there to take care of it. We didn't do it. So now how do we attack Iran? Let's get a map of Iran up here so that people can check this out. I need a geographic map. So, here we go. This is a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. That'll work. So, as we can see, now I'm not a general or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure that the dark brown are mountains. And I'm pretty sure that the country that we invaded about 20 years ago below that, which is Iraq, did not have any mountains. It was all flat desert. So it was extremely easy. America, what is our tactics in military conflict? It's blitzkrieg. Let's be honest. It's blitzkrieg. The Germans came up with it in World War II. It's effective. Lightning war. You go in as quickly as possible, smash an enemy's military before they can react. Use superior air power in conjunction with mechanized units to destroy your enemy and their will to fight and their ability to fight. Tanks don't work well in the mountains. They don't. This is an extremely mountainous country. It has a much larger population. It has a more extremist population. We know that the problem with Iraq wasn't the Iraqi army. It was the insurgency that took place afterwards. We're also dealing with a country that has a lot of political turmoil. Iran is very volatile right now. We've been seeing the young people have more and more uprisings against the government, women fighting for their rights, things like that. There's a lot of social turmoil there. In my opinion, the mullahs, their time there is limited. Should we go to war with them and then galvanize their population against the United States, or should we fund operations to try to destabilize their government and empower the people there that want freedom and democracy? I don't know. One of those options seems a lot better than the other. I don't think we should be fighting in the mountains and trying to, and remember, if you guys don't know, the capital of Iran, Tehran, is up there. It's right here. It's in this little part right here. So we don't have Afghanistan anymore. We got rid of that. So we can't come from this side, which, you know, it looks like there's some paths there. We can't go through Iraq really, but that's the Dove path. So what do? We got to go right here. This little path right here. Because the Emirates will allow us to use the military bases that we have there. But look at that. How much oil traffic goes through there every single day? How much of it? And you're going to rely on this little strait here for an amphibious assault, which amphibious assaults are notoriously difficult because they can see them coming. They can set up all their defenses there. Iran has a lot of suicide drones. So that's what's going to happen. They're going to get sold weapons from other countries. It is so stupid. Could the U.S. do it? Sure. But we don't trust Joe Biden. We don't like him. We see what's happened with the military, the demoralization, the wokeification of the military. Military recruitment numbers have dropped over the last few years. Do you think this will be a popular war? Do you think that the people that would actually be good war fighters, which is typically conservative patriot Americans, are going to fight in a war for Joe Biden against Iran? No, we're not. It would be freaking stupid. We're absolutely not going to do it. This would be a stupid conflict. Air power is not going to destroy Iran. We do not have the capability to do so. And guess what? If we put the resources that we need in theater to take out Iran, it's going to be a conflict that will be costly to us because they'll also mobilize extremist elements within the U.S. They probably have terror cells, so you could expect some terrorist attacks in the United States or against our allies in Europe and everything like that. But if we get into a quagmire here, that opens the door again for China and Russia to do more crap because we've already given away a lot of our weaponry and ammunition. So if we go into Iran, you sure as hell know that the Chi-Coms and the Russians, now the Russians are in a weird position. They can't really help anybody else. They got their own shit going on. But do you think that Russia and China won't take care of that with material support with them if they can? Of course they are. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do. And again, it opens up another front for the Chinese to try to take Taiwan. So that's why war in Iran is stupid from a strategic perspective. You'll never get any unity behind it. And the Iranians are being smart because they're not launching terrorist attacks or anything in the U.S. Now, if they launch a terrorist attack in the U.S., all bets are off because we're going to be pissed and then we're going to want blood. It's going to be like September 11th all over again. The Iranians are a little bit smarter than the enemies that we've faced in the past. The Chinese are a little bit smarter than the enemies that we've faced in the past. And the Russians are the Russians. They make mistakes all the time, but they can't be underestimated because Putin is not an idiot. So people have seen the mistakes that other nations have made in taking on the United States. They won't make them again. This is not a movie where the villain is going to give out their plan and twirl their mustache and be an idiot and fall into our trap. We're the ones that are being the idiots falling into traps right now. The last Cuomo-sexual member for 5 months. It's part of Rolo's Candungueros. Hey, Rolo, I would love to hear your thoughts on the conflict in Myanmar. Civilian militia using 3D printing technology to resist tyranny. I'm not too familiar with what's going on in Myanmar. Last Cuomo-sexual, I will do more research about that. But obviously, I am all for civilians to be, able to build their own arms in order to, stand against oppression. That's the right of all people in this world, to have means to defend yourself. So, war in Iran, it would be stupid. It would be pretty stupid. So I see that we're coming towards the end of the show. So I want to talk about one topic. I was going to talk a little bit about SHOT Show and some of the awesome guns. I didn't really get to Second Amendment related material on this show. I am the Puerto Rican pistolero. That's what I should. This became a geopolitics and morality show. and I preached a little bit. It was actually really good. I'm proud of that. So I think we'll have to talk about SHOT Show next week. But there was one more topic that I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of our social issue, and that's what is going on with Jordan Peterson. It's been going on for a few years now, but it seems like it's come to a head. For those of you that do not know, Jordan Peterson is basically on the verge of losing his psychology license in Canada. He's been attacked by the woke powers that be within the government and enemies throughout the world, essentially. So you can watch the latest episode of his podcast. His daughter Michaela, I believe that's her name. Yeah, Michaela. Peterson interviews him, and they discuss
monitor psychologist
what he's going through there, and I think it's definitely worth a listen. I think Jordan Peterson is fantastic. He's done a great job for a lot of young men, especially throughout the world, with 12 Rules for Life. I read the book itself. I have his other newer book. He's got 2 more that he's writing right now. So I recommend that if you are a little bit lost and you don't know what you're doing, Jordan Peterson's got a good way. No, he does not cry here, Christidios. But I think he's gotten to the point where he's just tired of this crap, honestly. He's got he's pretty much tired of it. I've got some articles here. One's from the Toronto Sun, so I would expect it to be against him. But this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the weaponization of politics to go after your political enemies. This is pretty much what it is. Using regulatory bodies to try to discredit somebody because he speaks truth to power. And he's pushed back against authoritarianism and the trans insanity that's been going on in our schools and within psychology itself, where essentially we have psychologists encouraging people, young people that are healthy, instead of getting proper mental health that they need to resolve their issues, they're just telling them, just cut your junk off or take these, take these medications that will sterilize you so that you can never have children again. It's barbarism. And he's pushed back against that. So this is from last year, but we can check out some of the tweets and then you guys can see how bad it is. Can I close this crap? I don't know if I can. Okay, there we go. I'm not going to read through this article because it's pretty much BS. But on December 31st, 2021, Peterson retweeted American conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, who had posted several statements regarding COVID-19 and government restrictions. Peterson added his own comments calling for an end to lockdowns and end to mask mandates and allowing people to get on their lives. Enough already. This is his quote, his tweet for those that are listening. Enough already. Time to stop. Stop the mask, stop the lockdown, stop the petty, mad hysteria, leave people alone and let them go on with their lives. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. On January 4th, 2022, he repeated a conservative MP, so, politician there in Canada, and said basically the same thing. Enough COVID mandates, drop the damn mask and the idiot rules to get on with life today. These 2 tweets make up the first complaint listed in the registrar's investigation. So this is going on at the university that he was worked at. It's simply someone complaining to the college psychologist that Peterson had tweeted about COVID-19 restrictions and the way the complainant disagreed with them. So this is people complaining about things that Jordan Peterson said, now using this to file complaints against the university, which is now basically taking him and saying, you need to go through our re-education process or we're going to take away your license. So first of all, it is bullshit that you think you can re-educate somebody in these situations. Second of all, they know he's not going to do it. This is Jordan Peterson. He's not going to buy their bullshit or cave to this stuff. Absolutely not. So he's not going to do it. He's even said so as much when you watch this show, and he said it in the past. He is not going to do it. Do any of you think that you could be re-educated and that things that are fundamentally true that you advocate for all your moral fiber, would you cave to that? Especially if you're in the position that Jordan Peterson is, which is he has become more of a public figure at this point. He does not rely on the money that he makes as a psychologist anymore. He's written books. He's a media figure. He's a contributor to, I believe, the Daily Wire at this point. So he doesn't need this crap. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's making a ton of money. He does not need this. So if you're in that position, do you think that you're going to cave to this stuff? Do you think you're going to go to re-education? No, you're going to laugh at their face, or you're going to go to that re-education and tell them to go F themselves all the time. That's what you're going to do. Then he called somebody a prick. Nothing wrong with that. And then they're like, oh, well, this isn't a professional comment, for somebody who's on the board. Then he referenced, he went after the prime minister and said, stop, puppet. Now, what's your end game, Justin Trudeau? Lay it out. Again, dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the way that the Canadian government handled it. And then he was having a discussion with somebody that on human population levels on Earth. Peterson said that he didn't think the planet was overpopulated. A man named Roger Palfrey responded that he disagreed and that the human population levels were leading to a loss of species and damaging the planet. And Peterson said, you're free to leave at any point. This guy took it as incitement to take his own life, which is pretty freaking ridiculous. And even if that's what he meant, who gives a crap? It's like, just go F yourself, man. This is how it is. I'm sorry. I'm heated up right now about this. So yeah, Carla was pointing out the social media training and the re-education. And then at this point, Peterson became aware of a complaint against him, began tweeting about the abusive process of everything. 6 months until the investigation reaches its conclusion. 18 pages of background information to sift through. I'm done with it. I'm not defending myself against such accusations anymore. The tweets and other complaining about the process became part of the investigation, leading and complaint against Peterson, leading to the demand that he undergo training or lose his license. In February 2022, in a tweet from February of 2022, Peterson responds to somebody claiming white supremacy is a problem in Canada. Peterson disagrees and said that's the totality of the tweet. And said so. That's the totality of the tweet. Disagreeing that Nazis and white supremacists are part of Canadian culture, and the College of Psychologists, rather than dismissing it, makes it part of their official report on Peterson. And here's the actual tweet. Nazis, white supremacists. These simply do not exist in Canada. There's no culture of such things in Canada, political or otherwise. Another complaint was the tweet directed to New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Peterson was promoting his tour and played off the fact that Ardern, an uber progressive, is no fan of his work. If you've read, it seems like this actually is a fairly conservative article based on what's going on here. If you read his work in passing or vaguely know about his book 12 Rules for Life, then you know what his comment about cleaning up their rooms is all about. I'm coming back, Jacinda Ardern, alt-right-wing trolls gathering in my wake, a veritable dread army of the night. Or are they ordinary people trying to clean up their rooms and mend their families? So obvious sarcasm and humor. But oh no, he's like threatening a prime minister here. So you can see that's the case that is against him. A bunch of innocuous tweets that are complete and total bullshit. And now they want to force this man to go through re-education, or else they're going to take his license to practice psychology, which is what he's done for his life and what he is known for, or what's led to his prominence now, all because of these tweets, which are nothing, absolutely nothing. This is what we're dealing with today. It started with mean tweets from Donald Trump, but this is what the progressive authoritarian left does. That's what they do. This is what we've seen, the woke mob, all these people, the uniparty, whatever you want to call it, the woke ideology that's authoritarian. It's authoritarianism, ultimately, what we're dealing with here. People that want to take away your ability to have a livelihood and to have freedom of speech because you call them out for their insanity, which is what's going on here. I would also recommend, and I'll drop this article in the chat. This is from Fee, and you can read a little bit more about it and why licensing organizations, like government licensing organizations, should be abolished, which I pretty much agree with. Look, when we look at the tech and IT space, we get our professional certifications from private organizations and the like. So basically industry standards, those kinds of things. Maybe that's how it should be for almost everything. Some people wouldn't like that because they feel that the government is the one that needs to do everything. But I'm a little bit more libertarian, and I think that you can have private standards for professionalism and things like that. That doesn't mean that they'll be immune from this type of bullshit either. They absolutely would be. But we already see the way that governments are moving towards, and they tend towards authoritarianism. So maybe this is something that we need to look into. At the same time, people need people that are in positions to do so. I understand if you have a family and that relies on you, you may not be in the position to make certain sacrifices. At least Jordan Peterson is in the position where if they do this, he just tells them, you know what, forget you guys. I'll be fine. I don't need my damn license. I'll keep doing what I do. So that I think is something to look out for. It would be a travesty. And we've already seen, look, Canada is further down the path to destruction than the U.S. is at this point. They really are. They've gone absolutely crazy. Justin Trudeau, Castro's love child, is a terror there. And he acts all polite and everything, but we know it's all bullshit. So that's what I've got for the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. If you came in late, I encourage you to watch the beginning of the show, then see how I kind of led into all this stuff and the tirade. It wasn't the show that I expected, but again, restraint. We're going to go back to the word that we started the show with. You have to show restraint sometimes. And you have to be willing to listen to other people's opinions, their advice. Doesn't mean that you're going to listen to it, but sometimes people open up your eyes to certain things and make you think in a different way. And I think it's important to have people that you trust that can give you wise counsel, whose opinions you value, to challenge your thoughts and your opinions. And it may not change how you feel or you know, your moral fiber. You may know that you're right, and that's just the way it is. Greg the Goblin dropping another 20. Thank you so much. But if you're not willing to take counsel and at least listen to what other people have to say, especially people that you trust, that you value, then I don't know what to tell you. You're kind of like leaving a lot out there on the table, and you may make some mistakes because we're not perfect. We're all, you know, fallen beings here, that we make mistakes. We say the wrong things sometimes, and sometimes we get a little bit carried away, but that doesn't mean that we can't improve upon ourselves and try to be better. So I appreciate all of you. Rebel Scum 1776, I hope that you enjoyed the show and feel that this is a welcome environment for you. And yeah, just try to find people out there that you can trust. Cerberus has just been gifting subs left and right these last 2 weeks. Gifted 5 more. Thank you so much, Cerberus. Thank you all for being here tonight. We had like almost 80 people watching. I think it's at one point. The show is going to grow. It's only the second episode of Puerto Rican Pistolero. I wasn't sure when the channel changed how it was going to be. Got a lot of momentum to rebuild, but I will be here every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. You'll see me doing at least 2 or 3 gaming streams a week on this channel as well. I'll try to get Rumble and Kick going with that too. I like having the higher quality, but we need to spread the word on all these platforms because ultimately YouTube doesn't like what we have to say in a lot of cases. So we have to use alternative platforms to get our message out there and help those platforms out too. So thank you all so much for joining me on episode 2 of Rolo's Rants. Take care, everybody. God bless. Have a great week. Oh, there goes my voice. I got to drink some tea.